I'm Margaret Stove from New Zealand, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you my passion for spinning superfine merino wool. In New Zealand we are very fortunate, and we have a climate where the merino that is growing there is probably about the best in the world. The tensile strength in relation to fibre diameter is probably the finest, and it usually grows very clean and white and is grown outdoors without being covered. Merino does have some challenges when it comes to spinning it, especially for hand spinners. When it's spun commercially, there are procedures for heat setting the yarns, the fibre, so that it stays in place. For a hand spinner, that all has to be discovered. And this was one of the things that I also had a problem with when I first started spinning merino, in that it felted and it shrank and it pilled and it did all the things that you certainly don't want for a lace garment. Spinning merino by hand has its challenges, and I'm hoping that the discoveries I've made might be helpful to those of you who also would like to be able to spin superfine merino to make your lace heirlooms. So now we're going to start spinning a single. And again we're going to put the tip end to the twist. And we just let a few fibres catch in at a time and then start drafting it down. The trick is to keep it very loose as you bring it down, so you don't pull those little fibres out that have got caught into the twist. And now we have to do something else that we don't have to worry about if we're using a commercial top or if we're using a stronger wool type. And that is that merino has a very tight crimp pattern, as we discussed when we were sorting the fleece. And this means that you have to straighten that crimp as the twist comes into the fibre. And the way I do that is by doing the worsted method, where the twist follows on my finger into the fibre and then is drafted back. Now this has actually there's another problem has come from this, in that when people are spinning these beautiful long merino staples that we have nowadays, we have the trap that we're inclined to spin to the length of the staple before we introduce a new one. And this creates a weak spot, which is very likely to break when you use your plied yarn. Now, the idea is to have a constant overlapping of fibre all the time, so that you're reinforcing as you go. And this was much easier to do, of course, when we had very short staple, because we had to do that to make it hold together. So how are we going to do this? We're going to make sure that when the twist comes down, that it picks up enough fibre, and then hold where it's twisted and then draft back, so that you ration it out. So it feels a bit scary because you think you're going to get a big lump of fibre in there, but in actual fact you can draft out that extra fibre that you don't want. So you bring it right in and then draft it back out again. And where you have that tension zone, doesn't really matter. You can have it under your thumb, you can have it on top of your finger, but it must stay there. And if you do this, you'll end up with a beautifully elastic yarn.